And we are live here at FMA Discussion. Should be episode 195. I'm just gonna call him Mr. Slash because he's a bunch of slashes. New York Times best-selling author, martial artist, screenwriter, speculative fiction author of both like horror, fantasy, and sci-fi. Worked in TV. Currently have a lot of pitches right now going to Hollywood that we can't really talk about because it's classified, and he has some NDAs. But I'm gonna call him the Slash Stephen Barnes.
Yeah, I do have a couple things that I can talk about. That AMC Shudder is doing a series called Horror Noir. It's an anthology with 6 stories, and my wife and I wrote 2 of them. So it's a movie. We wrote 1/3 of their movie.
This is in AMC.
Yeah, AMC Shudder. So it'll be streaming on Shudder and on AMC in October next month.
I actually subscribe. I'm subscribed to that through my Amazon Prime subscription, so I'll be looking forward for that because I did see the film noir, documentary with your wife, and I really love that documentary, and I want to see you in it. I know that they want her, but where's Stephen Barnes?
Well, I'm not primarily horror. It's just like she's the horror maven. I'm much more science fiction, although I do love horror. I really do.
And so I did get at least between I tried to coalesce it last night, but between 8 to a dozen questions from different people.
Okay.
Some of them touched on the same thing. They were like identical questions, so I tried to kind of bring them in together.
Okay.
So I think in order to answer some of them, we need to talk first about your origins and what was the Keystone event that happened when you were a child that got you into martial arts.
That's a good question. I mean, I had always been interested because I was a small kid and I didn't have my father in the home. I was raised by my mother and my sister. So I was a target for bullies. And I remember drawing cartoons of a kid with a YMCA cap doing Mr. Moto judo techniques, so I was always interested in it. But there was one very specific day that triggered everything, that set me off on that path. There was this kid named Rudy that I went to elementary school with. And Rudy was a bully. He's built like a wedge. He wasn't tall, but he was solid. And I was terrified of him. He pulled a pair of brass knuckles out on me when I was in, 5th grade or 4th grade. And in junior high school, I usually managed to stay out of his way, but in junior high school, things kind of came to a head. And I went down to the office one day to pick up probably some mimeo sheets for my teacher. And when I went to the principal's office or vice principal's office, Rudy was sitting in there. And he'd obviously gotten into some trouble of some kind or another. And he got it through his head that because I showed up in the office that I had been responsible for him getting in trouble. And so he swore that after school he was going to get me for this. So I was terrified. That was like the worst day of my life, man. I mean, the rest of the day, I'm like just shaking and, just scared. And when the school bell rang, I hurried out of the gates as fast as I could and was heading home down this major street called Washington Boulevard, the 6-lane street near my house. And I'm walking down the street and I hear this yell and I turn around and there's Rudy and his brother, Oliver, and 2 or 3 friends. And Oliver was even bigger than Rudy. And they came running across the street after me, and Rudy is like, they're like surrounding me, and Rudy's punching me in the face and punching me in the back and the neck and screaming obscenities and spitting in my face and like this, saying, come on and fight. And I was completely terrified because I knew I couldn't beat Rudy. But even if some miracle had happened and I'd beaten Rudy, then his brother Oliver would have jumped in. And if by some incredible miracle I managed to beat Oliver, then his friends would have jumped in. So I was totally screwed. I mean, there was no way out. But every time he hit me and screamed at me, I could feel something breaking apart inside me. I was literally coming apart psychologically. And I was just beginning to kind of figure out maybe what it was like to be a man, what that was. And every time he hit me and I knew I was afraid to strike back, it was damaging that. I could literally feel my ego buckling. And something just cracked inside me. And I realized I'd rather die than go through this. You know, I couldn't fight, but I had to. I had to, but I couldn't. I couldn't. I must. I couldn't. I must. And something just broke. And I put my books down and I walked out into the middle of Washington Boulevard and stood on the double yellow line with cars and trucks whizzing past on both sides, people yelling, yelling at me. And I looked at Rudy and I said, come out here and do that. And he looked at me and I looked at him and he flinched. And I could see it in his face. He realized he'd pushed me too far, that I no longer cared, because if he'd come out there, I was going to kill him. I was going to push him in front of a truck. And so he said, oh man, that nigga's crazy. And he and his friends laughed and they walked away, and they never bothered me again. But when I walked out of the street and picked my books up and walked home, I was crying. I was messed up. But I also realized that I'd found something inside myself, a part of me that was prepared to die before I would let myself be dishonored and be hurt. And I realized that I had defeated 5 thugs because I was not afraid to die. And that's a terrible thing for a 14-year-old kid to discover. But it also suggested to me that there was a way out of my trap, that way out of feeling so helpless. And that I had to find a way to rediscover that. It's like I knew that if I had done it once, if I'd accessed that place once, I could do it again. And if I could do that again, I'd never have to be afraid. And even though I did not think to myself martial arts immediately, that was in many ways the beginning of the serious search, where I knew what I was looking for. I was looking for a place that was beyond fear. And I knew that I had to find it or die. That was the beginning. Might have been in 8th grade, maybe. I can't hear you, Julius. You're muted.
I'm sorry. So that's really a true Keystone event. That's why I'm a little bit kind of speechless, trying to formulate my thoughts.
Right.
You were a kid that grew up in LA. You actually went to school with Dave Brin. He was a few years ahead of you.
Yes, I did.
Correct?
Yeah, David
what,
Brin was I think 1 year ahead of me at Los Angeles High School.
So what are the odds that 2 world famous authors are gonna come from the same high school and be a year apart?
Yeah, that's true. Ray Bradbury went to the same school too, although that was considerably earlier.
Right. One's an upperclassman, one's a underclassman. Yeah, you're right. Ray did go to that school, and he'd have very fond memories, because he was telling me that he would do roller skates in the studios when he was growing up, seeing like Clark Gable and all them people in MGM.
Yeah, Ray was a great man, and I loved him dearly. He was important in my writing career. And if this was a different podcast, I could get into that. But yeah.
So you're prior to me going over to your first formal introduction to martial arts, and then later on, maybe in the 70s you started BKF, right, with Steve Muhammad?
Yeah, that would be in the 70s. My first introduction to the martial arts would have been, books by Bruce Tegner, Instant Self-Defense and stuff like that. A book by Masoyama, This is Karate. And a Shotokan karate class at my high school. And then wrestling at LA City College. And then various things in Doryu karate with Dr. Philip Scornia and Hapkido with C.O. Choi. Then I went to college and studied Taekwondo there. And after that, I somewhere in the early 70s, I attended a a martial arts expo, and I saw this man moving with a level of speed, power, and authority, precision I had never seen before. And I knew that I needed to find out more about this. And that was Steve Sanders at the time, fastest human being I ever saw. At his physical peak, just stunning speed and precision, just amazing. And I walked into his school and I said, Mr. Sanders, my name is Stephen Barnes, and I'd like to learn karate. And he said, well, we'd like to teach you karate. I said, I have to tell you, I don't know how to fight. And he said, that's okay. We do.
I mean, for a lot of kids that grew up basically post 1970s onwards, like 1970s kids up to the 90s, Steve Muhammad's a legend because he has that scene in Enter the Dragon where they're going like, doing the forms in the school,
right,
with Jim Kelly. And so
yeah, Jim Kelly's school was across the street from our school, actually.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. It's like the way that you just described that story right now is like a movie. That's a movie line. That's a movie line. Let's just jump forward because I do have to address these live questions that were sent to us right now.
Absolutely. Nothing, and greetings to all the people who are watching live, and anything that I can do to contribute to your life and your training, please do not hesitate.
So if I'm not mistaken, Joe is up north in Canada or in the Northeast, Joe Apostol, and then Elric Jundis, which is from the Philippines, watching this interview in the morning.
Wow. Greetings to the Philippines.
Yeah, so they're both very good high-level practitioners. So I just want to address Joe. Hello, handsome gents. Wow, Stephen Barnes. And they kind of asked it at the same time. Elric asked, I don't know if this was covered earlier, but can he touch on his collaboration with Scott Sonnen and his experiences with TAC-FIT conditioning, especially insights for us past 50?
Okay, so I was training in Pintjock Silat in Vancouver, Washington, and there was a guy, I might not get his name right, Eric, I believe it is, who was in the class with us, and he mentioned that he knew this guy named Scott Sonnen that I should check out. So I looked at their website and I saw one product that looked very interesting to me, and it was actually a lecture. And I don't remember. I think I might have gotten his Be Breathed, which I thought was really brilliant and approached the question of ki and chi and breathing from a different perspective than I had seen in yoga or the martial arts. And then there was a lecture called The Flow State Performance Spiral. And I listened to this, and he basically said he was coming from a Russian perspective. And the Russians say that any movement is composed, or any physical action is composed of three aspects: breath, movement, and structure. That each of them is created by the other two. That movement and structure create breathing, breath and motion create structure, breath and structure create movement. And that what the martial artists seeks to do is to keep this structure integrated within themselves, but to disintegrate this structure in his opponent. In other words, you're striking them in order to interrupt their breathing, or to unbalance their anatomical structure, or to degrade their movement through pain, or interfering with the way the nervous system is processing messages. Through fear and things like this. You're trying to freeze this. You're trying to take apart the structure. And the thing that hit me is he said that psychological time distortion within the martial arts that is witnessed when the master is playing with one of his students, and it seems that the master is moving in slow motion and the student is moving quickly, but somehow the master is in control of this. That what you have there is a result of the differential between the level of integration of these factors on the part of the master and these exact same factors being disintegrated on the part of the student or the opponent. And I looked at that, and it connected with something that I'd learned from the guy that I was studying shamanic practices with, where he talked about the way the mind processes reality, and he called it the octagonal mirror. It's like you have a camera that is sampling reality X number of times per second, and the more number of times per second that you're sampling reality, the slower things seem to be moving. But if you can distract somebody or hurt somebody, or you hit them, and now all of a sudden, instead of thinking that I want to hurt you, they're thinking, oh my God, I've been hurt. They're no longer sampling reality at the same speed. So therefore, your movements seem faster to them, because it's like running a camera in slow motion. Everything speeds up. If you run the camera in fast motion, everything slows down. So what the master wants to do is to sample reality as many times as possible, but intimidate the opponent, or to decrease their sensory acuity, such that confuse their minds, fill them with fear, distraction, so that they're sampling reality at 4 times per second while you're sampling it at 12 times per second. So functionally, you're 3 times faster than them in terms of what your mind is picking up. I looked at that and that flow state performance spiral thing, and I thought to myself that this was like a Rosetta Stone, that the Russians were saying something very similar to what was being said by Native Americans and within the shamanic community, and that those two things allowed me to hook in some other things I'd learned from yoga and Tai Chi and some other stuff. And it was like, what the heck? Where did this guy come from? So I decided to meet him, and I drove up to a workshop he was doing in Seattle. And I got to know him, and we began to play together. I thought that he was, and I still think that he is, the smartest human being that I've ever met, who puts that intelligence into the question of how the physical body works. He's just brilliant, and eccentric, but that was okay with me. That was totally okay with me. And that led to our relationship. I got to see early iterations of FlowFit. I still do FlowFit too. Sometime I think that a combination of 5 minutes of Turkish get-ups followed by FlowFit 2 has a very unusual effect. I've never been able to figure out exactly what it is, but it does something to your nervous system. And Scott and we did the TacFit Warrior together, where we designed it together, and I designed a hypnotic track to go along with the exercises. And that I was very proud of that. I still am. And I think the world of Scott. I don't get to play with him as much as I used to. I spoke with him on the phone a few months ago, and next time I'm up in the Northwest, I sure hope I'm going to have a chance to see him. He's off having adventures. He has connections in various communities that are not as open as some other communities are. Let's just say that he's doing what he was built to do.
It's so you're saying, out of any man you've met when it comes to the topic of proprioception, he's probably the authority. It's like the science, or the science of
he's
movement.
half Einstein and half meathead.
That's good.
I mean that with ultimate affection.
That's great. So we addressed one of the live questions. We'll continue with our story with the 70s one. So your first formal introduction to martial arts, essentially.
Something. I mean, I guess it would have been Hapkido. With Seo Choi. I competed in the 1972 National Korean Karate Championships and took second place. So I knew how to play pity pat, but I didn't know how to fight. When I saw Steve Sanders, I knew I was looking at fighting. That was different. That was like, oh my dear God, that is real. So I went to that school, and even though it was not traditional in terms of traditional Chinese art, traditional Japanese art, he had taken Chinese Kempo, Ed Parker's Chinese Kempo, and he had modified it so that it worked for his body, his psychology, his understanding of the streets. And Steve was and is 100% real. I mean, the man is amazing, an amazing human being, not just an amazing martial artist. I love him dearly. I truly, truly do. And I learned from him what being a warrior is. And I always excluded myself from that because I wasn't the kind of athlete and fighter that they had at that school. I mean, at one time, 7 out of 10 of the top competitors in the California, Nevada, Arizona, tri-state area were all from that one school. I mean, it was that kind of school. I mean, they were just serious badasses. This was no joke. And in comparison to these guys, you know, I was nothing as far as I was concerned. This was going through my head. I mean, I remember, you know, I was in the school one day, and this like 13-year-old kid asked me to spar, and he just kicked my butt. I mean, just thrashed me, and then started bragging to everybody about how he beat a man. It just broke me psychologically. But it turned out that kid was Alvin Prouder, who turned out to be welterweight champion of the world, full contact karate. Said it was a little bit like playing chopsticks with baby Mozart. I mean, I never had a prayer, but it affected me psychologically. And years went by, and I would go to the school, and then the psychological intimidation was just too much, and it just punched me back out. I had a lot of fear that was present in my body from all the bullying, you know, when I was a kid. It took me 17 years to earn my first black belt because I was dealing with so much of this. But even though I did that and had those credentials, it never stopped eating at me that I had not been able to follow the path through the BKF. And many years went past, and I had 2 black belts in other I had one in judo and one in Kempo karate, and one in a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. And I'd spent time, and I'd done, you know, with Danny Inosanto, and you know, years practicing Pinchak Silat and so forth. Just wonderful teachers, wonderful arts, but there was that nagging thing in the back of my head. I had not completed this thing that I so very much wanted to. And what happened was Cliff Stewart, you know, who is very advanced Silat practitioner, you know, Kali practitioner under Danny Inosanto as well, and one of the founders of the BKF, you know, built like a rhino, moved like a cat, could bench press 500 pounds, and had like 15 advanced black belts. And I was studying some things with him, and I mentioned to him one day that I had not been able to complete myself at the BKF because I was so intimidated by the young warriors there. And Cliff laughed in my face. He said, "Oh, Steve, they weren't warriors. They were athletes playing warrior games. Those guys would have been good at anything: basketball, hula hoops, breakdancing. A warrior is someone whose word is good. A warrior is someone who raises his own children. A warrior is someone who takes a stand for his community." And I understood at that moment something about myself that I hadn't gotten. I hadn't understood why the martial arts instructors who I'd known had been so kind to me, had not mocked me, had not shamed me for not being, you know, one of their best, because they knew that every single time I came to class, I was bringing 100% of who I was. I didn't have anything left, man. It was all, I gave them all I had. And a true martial arts master, they don't ask for more than that. They just ask you to actually bring who you are. And then it is the magic of these arts that if you can empty yourself completely and find a teacher whose feet you can sit at and just say, "Yes, teacher. Yes, Sifu. Yes, sensei," that what we think we are is not what we really are. We're not our egos. We're not our pain. We're not our wounds. We're something else. We're something that is capable of dying with dignity to protect our families. We're something that's capable of walking out into the middle of the street at 13 and being willing to die rather than be shamed. And if you can make touch with that part of yourself, that's the doorway to all the mastery there is. Yeah, they're people of vast skills. I mean, just amazing skills. Isn't it beautiful? But all you have to do is be on that path and bring everything that you have. And measure yourself only against whether or not you're more authentic today than you were yesterday. And because Cliff opened that door for me, I was able to go to Steve after many, many years and ask him to evaluate my skills. You know, I was able to feel like I was at peace with a part of myself I'd always been at war with, to accept myself, to know I had done the very best I can. And if you have a baby and that baby takes a step and falls, the baby will look at you wondering how he's supposed to feel about that. And if you say, oh, you fell, baby, bad baby, or you hurt yourself, the baby will start crying. But if you say, good baby, the baby will laugh and get up and try to take another step. And I'm suggesting that we love ourselves as much as we would love that baby, and understand that at every moment of our lives, we have done the best we could with what we had. And if you do that and you then bring that to the art that you wish to practice, man, that's all there is. You're going to be as good as it's possible for you to be. And why in the world would you be dissatisfied if you're doing the best you can do? If you're doing the best you can do, party time. I mean, you can't do better than that. What's the sense of beating yourself up? Bring everything you have to your physical discipline, to your career, to your marriage, to your family, and sit in the middle of that triangle with your career, you know, your physicality and your relationships as the locuses, as the points of that triangle. And you sit in the middle and you get to ask yourself, you know, who am I? You know, I'm this in the arena of the martial arts, and I'm this in the arena of my writing, and I'm this with my marriage and with the people that I love. In the middle of this, there is this person who was born at this point and will die at this point, and I'm on this road called life, and I'm doing the very best that I can. And if you're doing that, you can be happy. I mean, and the Dalai Lama says the meaning of life is to seek joy. So everything that we're doing is an attempt to just be happy, man. To be happy and to spread joy. And when you do that, you unleash your real genius, because it's the little child part of you. It's the part of me that walked out of the middle of Washington Boulevard that has the creativity, that has the aliveness that you need to write, to get up every morning and see every day as an adventure. And how can I problem solve this? And I want to give love to my family and my friends and my community because it's flowing through me, you know. And it's, anyway, yeah. I went off on a tangent there.
The viewers didn't know that they would have a taste of Ralph Waldo Emerson eloquence with the quickness. they weren't expecting that in this talk, but you know, this is good. This is good stuff. Tying into that, essentially what you said integrated you was meeting training with Cliff. Was this in the 90s with Mahaguru?
No, it was in the 2000s.
It was in the 2000s.
I didn't train with Cliff until I lived up in the Northwest at the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s. I was training with Stephen Plink at that time. When I came back to Los Angeles, I honestly wasn't certain if I was going to continue practicing the arts. I just didn't know what I was supposed to do. I was a little bit at loose ends. And I ran into Cliff at a writing conference where I was lecturing, and his girlfriend was there because she was a writer, and he was there with her, and I reconnected. And beautiful man. I miss him horribly.
I mean, from everything that I hear from so many people, I mean, he was very well loved.
He was a superb human being, and you know, a warrior and a scholar, and a gentleman, and a gentle man. The only time I ever saw anger in him was on 2 occasions. One, somebody mentioned that someone had hurt a child, and the other time someone mentioned that someone had hurt a woman. Something else was there in Cliff at those moments, and I was very, very glad that it was not me they were talking about. That was one lethal human being. There's no question about it. He was the real deal, 100%.
Are you allowed to share that LAPD multi multi dude altercation?
Yeah, I know this what you're talking
Because
about.
there's just a little reference about 10 minutes ago. Your giant son walked around like the Silk Spectre across.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and
My son, I got him into judo and jujitsu when he was younger. He bounced back out. You know, he doesn't like, you know, discipline imposed from outside. But boy, is a fighter. You know, he loves to scrap. And just a couple months ago, he got into a fight today at school. Just he can deadlift over 300 pounds. He's 6'4", 6'5",
so it's
weighs
about
230.
Mahaguru Cliff size.
Yeah, except he's not as big in the upper body, and he's as fast as a snake, and he's very aggressive, and that's an affection trained boy. You better believe it. I do not want direct confrontation with him. Somebody would get badly hurt, possibly both of us. So we live in detente in this household. The knowledge we can hurt each other. You know, so let's be kind. Let's love each other. So I love him to death. I just love that kid so much.
Let's get sidetracked with that story, and then we'll go over the Inosanto Academy in the early.
Sure, 80s. Absolutely.
But so, let's get sidetracked with that cool.
Okay, so story. Cliff, this story was talked about in the opening, the introduction to Cliff's book on war, Within Arm's Reach, his bodyguard martial art. And it was written by Masada Mazayub, great combat pistol shooting instructor. He talks about this event where Cliff was coming out of a convenience store, and these 3 or 4 guys braced him. And the way Mazayub put it was they had, quote unquote, a critical failure of the victim selection process. When the police arrived, so much damage had been done to these 3 or 4 guys that the cops refused to believe that one human being had done it. But luckily, Cliff's brother was a police officer who was on night detail, and they called him at the station and told him that Cliff had been attacked by 4 guys. And all his brother said was, "How badly did he hurt them?" Oh, well.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but martial arts don't work, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah. But he had you told me, I don't know if I'm allowed to share, he had a lot of respect with a certain actor, martial actor. Am I allowed to talk about that?
No, I mean he was Wesley Snipes' bodyguard. He was Mr. T's bodyguard. He was Muhammad Ali's bodyguard. Guys, you know, absolutely, totally, 100% for real, man.
No, I'm saying he had a very healthy respect with a certain Chinese actor, martial artist.
Oh, you're talking about
Starts with yeah, Donnie Yen.
Yeah, Donnie Yen. Yeah, so basically he's over in Hungary. They're making Blade 2 in Hungary. And they go out for drinks. You know, Wes is there, and some guy starts something with them, and Cliff just puts this guy down. One technique, boom, put him down. Said that Donnie Yen, who was with him, just, you know, bowed to immediately, said, "Teach me, sensei." Teach me, Sifu. Donnie Yen, very obviously, from everything that you hear, is just very much for real as a martial artist and loves learning actual fighting. You know, he's not, you know, Jet Li is a fantastic martial artist, but he's a kata man primarily. Donnie Yen is a fighter. So he's, there's a story about Donnie Yen getting into a street fight with 7 guys or something like that in Hong Kong, and he, they followed him out of a restaurant, and he apparently was smart enough to anchor himself in a place where they could only come at him one at a time, and he just wiped them all out.
Wow.
Yeah.
His sister is pretty lethal too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool. I love that. Yeah. I love lethal women.
So
they're hot.
They are hot. Your wife's one of them. She's like a Dora Milaje, man. Don't get mad. Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad.
No, absolutely not. No, it's there she is. My wife is the world's premier black horror writer, the queen of black horror, and she is the love of my life. I adore her. I really do. We were engaged within 48 hours after meeting, and we've been together for 23 years.
See, folks, movies are real. He writes movies and teleplays, and he lives in one.
Yeah, I have a friend who accused me, says, you build dream castles and then move into them.
And you could catch her if you have Shudder. You can catch that really awesome documentary if you have Amazon Prime or Shudder. Film noir.
Film noir, yeah, starring my wife. She was executive producer on it and is interviewing people on screen. Jordan Peele, who we've had the pleasure of working with.
And you've mentored him technically, right? The two of you.
No, Jordan Peele, no. I mean, Jordan sprung full bore from the brow of Zeus. I mean, he's a genius. He really is. And we were stunned by Get Out. I mean, it's like, oh my God, I couldn't believe that someone had done this, and had not just done this, but had done this in a way that it was extremely palatable to the American public. I think part of it is because he's a world-class comedian. I mean, he can take any line, anything, and just turn it on a dime to be funny. I've never been around anybody like that before. But I think that because of that, he could take some very painful cultural realities and find ways to make them acceptable. He could take the tension off whenever he wanted to by getting you to laugh. And as a result, this movie that cost $4.5 million ended up making $250 million, over $250 million that movie made. He changed the game. Because of Jordan Peele, there's so much that is happening right now. So my wife was teaching his movie in her class at UCLA, and she did a Twitter post about it. And that Twitter post ended up at Monkey Paw, Jordan Peele's company, and they reached out. They sent it to him, and he reached out to her saying, "Ha ha, wouldn't it be funny if I snuck into your class?" And so we did. We snuck Jordan Peele into her class at UCLA, and the kids went crazy. I mean, they just went nuts. And he gave them like a half-hour lecture that was so beautiful and so smart and so honest and compassionate. It was just wonderful. And that was the beginning of our relationship with Jordan, which led to us working on The Twilight Zone, which led to, we did an episode of Twilight Zone called A Small Town, which led to us doing other stuff. I mean, a lot of other stuff that's happening now.
You're one of the few people in history to actually do the 2 revivals, right?
Yeah,
if not the only one. I think if not the only one.
I think I'm the only one. Yeah. I grew up on the original Twilight Zone, and then wrote for the Phil DeGuerre revival in the 80s, was it?
Yeah.
And then wrote for this one as well. And it's I've been really blessed. The martial arts, I needed them so much because I was filled with fear that I would not be able to satisfy my dreams. I wouldn't be able to find love the way I wanted to. I wouldn't be able to have the career that I wanted. And I felt like I grew up in a culture that was trying to tell me that my life wasn't worth anything. So because my father wasn't there, I had to build my own father in a sense. I had to be the father that I wished I could have had. I guess I've succeeded, because if I can be a father to my 6.5-foot Sasquatch of a boy, then I guess I'm okay. I guess I've made it.
When I met you, he was shorter than me.
Yeah, that's
and,
right.
And
That's right.
he just had this incredible growth spurt within the last few years or so.
Yeah, just whoop. So let's talk about Danny DeSanto. I mean,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm
So
telling you.
that's actually, go ahead. So because
No. Go ahead. Ask me what do you want.
Because this is probably going to tie to Guru Dan and Steve Muhammad, because
because Dan learned Kempo from Danny Inosanto. Danny Inosanto was one of Ed Parker's teachers. So Inosanto and Chuck Sullivan were the ones who promoted Steve Sanders, not Muhammad, to black belt, not Parker.
See, and that's a first, and you have it here on record now, folks, as a FMA discussion episode 195. We have that on record. So for you guys that don't know that little piece of FMA history and karate history,
right.
there it is right there.
Steve said that he thinks Danny could teach anybody to do anything. Danny is superb, just superb. He's a gentleman and a scholar. He is arguably the greatest martial arts instructor who ever lived. And it's not that his depth not that he goes deeper than anybody else. No, nobody could do that. But because of how long he's worked, because he's lived in a place where there were so many different arts available, because of his time with Bruce Lee, not just Lee helping him organize his mind, but that fame opened doors to him. I mean, you could be, a better martial artist, smarter martial artist, harder working martial artist. But if you're on an island someplace or at the top of a mountain, you don't have access to all these other arts like Danny has. So, meeting him when I first trained with him at the Kali Academy, I was working at Pepperdine University, and there was a guy who worked, maybe he was working in the bookstore. I think he was working, named Jim Green, who said that he'd come to Los Angeles from Texas. No, from New Mexico. Yeah, either from New Mexico or from Mexico, I think it was, to study at the Kali Academy. And I thought, oh, that sounds like fun. So I ended up going down there with him. And we went through the stages of Junfan kickboxing, which are taught by Richard Castillo. And after you go through 3 or 4 phases there, it takes about a year, you make a decision about what you want to do next. Like you go deeper into kickboxing. I chose to go into the Filipino martial arts, and that put me with Danny. Being around Danny was like drinking out of a fire hose. His mind is so fast. He understands so many different things, and he's trying to give you so many different concepts and ideas and exercises and stuff like this. It's an amazing experience that I absolutely recommend anybody to have, while we've still got him. And amazingly, he's still teaching. And I had the pleasure, the honor, the extreme honor of a 3-hour private lesson with him a few years back. And one of the things that I like to do when I meet someone who is a true master, I mean, just no unquestioned master, is ask them, what was it that got them started? It's like my story is walking out into the middle of Washington Boulevard, right? But I wanted to know, if this man is arguably, one of the best of the best of the best, what is it that triggered him? How does he get himself up every day to do the same thing? Because he told me several years ago, many years ago, he said, Steve, you can stay in shape as you get older. It just gets a little harder to motivate yourself every year. So the question was, what did he use to motivate himself? Who is this guy really deep down inside? And I asked him that question. He got a little bit quiet and he thought about it. And he said, when I was in elementary school, there was a bully that everybody was afraid of, big kid. And my best friend and I were sitting at lunch, and the bully came over and started messing with my friend. And I stood up and I got into it with him. And the guy's beating the hell out of me. And a couple of teachers came and they pulled us apart. And there are 2 teachers holding this guy, and there's 1 teacher holding me. And I broke free of the teacher holding me and punched this guy right in the face, right in the nose, broke his nose, blood streaming down his face. And the guy just starts crying his eyes out. And as the teacher hauled me away to the principal's office, these words ran through my mind. he bleeds too. Those words, that a bully can be huge and terrifying and imposing, but if you can hit them the right way, they bleed too. Those 3 words, that incident, is what motivated him to be one of the greatest martial arts instructors who ever lived. He doesn't like teaching fighters, people going into the octagon or something. What he's interested in is although he will do it, and he has done it, he's interested in teaching people to be strong. He's interested in teaching teachers. He's interested in teaching the secrets of the Filipino martial arts that he loves so much. He loves them so much. And I think I would be honest if I was saying that out of all the arts I've ever practiced, the Filipino martial arts, I think, are the most beautiful. They resonate the most in my heart. There's something about them that feels innate. They feel right to me. And if I could spend an hour a day for the rest of my life doing flowing exercises from the Chinese arts and the Filipino arts, I'd be a happy guy. Oh, I'm a happy guy anyway. So,
and so we're getting man. So you heard this story first here, folks. So don't forget episode 195, and we're having a very good showing for these people, like in a very good output in these messages, private messages that I'm getting. We're getting into meat and potatoes now. So we're spoiling you here because most people probably don't know that story, and you just shared that. So this ties to the next questions that were sent out actually just today. You probably answered them already. You said, who influenced you the most in your martial arts journey? And
yeah, that would be, Steve Muhammad, Cliff Stewart, Danny Inosanto. Goodness gracious. I mean, seriously, I give thanks. Every day I do a ritual every morning where I'm doing Tai Chi and I chant affirmations aloud. And one of the things I chant is who I'm grateful for. And Steve Muhammad, Danny Inosanto, and a woman named Dawn Callan. That's the woman that I did that course, the Warrior's Journey course with. Those are the people. Those are the people in the martial arts that I feel the most in debt to. I feel so blessed to have had their influence in my life. That made the difference. They're just people that that if you had not known them, your life would be the poorer. And so, I thank the bullies who used to hurt me when I was a kid because they put me on this path that has given me so very much. I've met so many wonderful people, and it's fun to still fun to feel like I'm still playing and still learning,
So this probably ties into that. This is questions coming all the way from Belgrade, Serbia.
Oh my goodness!
From Dragan Milosevic. Question from Mr. Barnes: is there still a place for the tribal avuncular? Avuncular is like being taught by like your uncle, right?
Yes.
Tribal or avuncular teaching approach in the martial arts. And do you think such methods lends itself better to some arts other than others?
I think that art, that the avuncular, the studying and teaching as if the person is a member of your family, that's your closed door teaching. There needs to be an open door teaching for people to come in, train, and you give them honest things, but you're also testing them for character, especially if you've got an art that's like a knife art or a weapon art that is actively lethal. That's critical. But by the time that student is advanced enough that you want to be touching hands with them, it's like if you see Shang-Chi, there's that wonderful sequence where Michelle Yeoh is teaching Shang-Chi and flowing with him, moving with him. That's real martial arts. That's family martial arts. That's when somebody really wants you to know. So moving people from the external to the internal, from the open door to the closed door, to where you would teach your son, the person who, if you were sick, and who would stand between you and danger, the people you would teach because you trust them completely, and you know that you're not going to be there for them all the time, and you want them to be strong. You want to pass that to them. That's touching hands with them. That's actually allowing them to feel your energy and for you to feel theirs. There's no faster way to learn. And the level of trust that requires is at the family level. That's that avuncular thing. Absolutely.
I think you answered already. His follow-up is, what would be its advantages and disadvantages compared to other common approaches?
Other approaches are faster in terms of, not faster, but you can teach more people. I mean, if you see somebody teaching forms in China, you can have 1,000 people following along to those forms, and you can broadly correct them. You can have your assistant instructors going out and correct them. So it's good for teaching large numbers of people at a time. And considering that most schools, the attrition rate is better than 90%, most people aren't going to make it to black belt, and black belt's where you begin to learn. So you need to be able to teach a lot of people with the understanding that most of them ain't going to stick around. So you're not going to break your heart on every one of them. You're not going to give everything you have to every one of them. They need to prove themselves. They need to prove that they're not going to ask you to do it for them, that they're going to bring it, that they're of good character, that they are actually interested in the system, that they are people who you'd be proud of. And so I think that the visual teaching, where you look at somebody doing something which is good for large groups, is an essential thing. But then you funnel it down until you get to the students, the handful of students that you want to teach in your garage. You invite them over on weekends, after midnight, you black out the windows, and now you play. And that game, well, that's the real story right there. that's the real thing. I've been blessed to have that kind of relationship with a few people, and there is nothing better. You can't pay your way into that. You have to earn your way into that. And if you earn the trust of a master, it's something that should be very precious to you, and you should prefer to die before you betray it.
Man, this is a really deep episode, folks. we're spilling all the tea. This is going to be the heavy questions now.
Yeah, go for it. This is fun.
How did martial arts influence you in your writing?
Well, aside from I love writing fight scenes, man. I love writing fight scenes. I just love it. It's so much fun. A number of my books are what I'd call 2.5 dimensional. People can do things that you can't really do. Physics and physiology prevent you from really doing some of the stuff I have people doing, but it sure is fun. But aside from that, energy, focus, understanding that things take time. When I got started in the field, there were some social boundaries that I could not cross. And I understood that. And I had a choice of quitting or becoming embittered or discouraged, or realizing that if I waited long enough, if I could keep working, if I could keep my heart alive and my enthusiasm there, that the culture would eventually change enough that I could tell the kinds of stories I wanted to tell. The question was, how long could it take? It could easily take 30 years. So the question was, can I have that much endurance psychologically, emotionally? And because of the martial arts, I already knew that it could take me 17 years to earn a black belt. Actually, no, I didn't know that at that time. That's true. That's not true. Something inside me back then was willing to invest myself. That's the only real advantage that I have, like I say, is that I will decide what I want, and then I'm willing to pay. If I've decided that I want it, I'm willing to pay any price to get it, no matter how long it takes. And I will not quit. I'll just keep going forward slowly. I've known tons of people who just were speed ahead of me, much faster than me, but I won't stop. And I think that I got that quality. I could see that in the martial arts. I could see that in some ways in terms of relationships, because of some things that I've gone through. But knowing that you're willing to commit to a process and do whatever it takes to get it all the way there, that you're not willing to quit, that this is who I am in this lifetime, that there are only 3 things that matter to me. in this lifetime. My writing and things connected to that, martial arts and things connected to that, and my relationship with my family and friends. That's it. So those three things all support each other. I get energy and focus and aliveness from the arts and courage. So people say, don't write about that. If you write about that, you'll be at risk. It's like, yeah, bring it. What are you going to do to me? I already know I'm going to die. So it's like, you can kill me, but you better actually do it. You don't want to leave that job half done. I can promise you that. So it's, I would say that I am a writer, I am a martial artist, I am a father and a husband. And these things are all different aspects of the same thing. They're all tied in with my sense of survival. They're all tied in with my heart. They're all tied in with my mind, my wisdom, and my spiritual connection. There's no real separation. That's just kind of who I am. I wake up in the morning and I'm that guy. I work all day. Sometimes I work out. I work out almost every day. And then I'm there for my wife, and I'm there for my son, and I'm there for my daughter, and I try to be there for my friends. And it's all part of the same thing, whether you're doing, abanico, or you're practicing, this type of plot structure, or I'm listening to my son talking about his hopes and dreams, or I'm interacting with my wife, all of these things are just expressions of who I am. They're not separate. I'm not separate people. I'm this guy, only I'm this guy doing this as opposed to this guy doing this. And I think that the martial arts are one of the most powerful tools that exist, because the feedback is so rapid and painful. You're getting it right. There's nothing that teaches better than getting punched in the face, man. You pay attention,
Yeah, this period of just to be specific, this period that you experienced a barrier in the writing community. Were you talking about the Street Lethal with Larry Niven?
I'm talking about the fact that for almost 20 years, Octavia Butler and I were the only Black science fiction writers in the world for almost 20 years. Chip Delaney had left the field. He'd gone into academia and queer fiction. Right. And it was unspeakably lonely. Just horribly lonely. And I had every reason in the world to think that things would never change, except that I know that the truth is that things never stay the same. And that if I could stay in the field, I could help change the direction of growth. And that was what I was committed to. So I've had a wonderful life. I've accomplished more than I ever dreamed that I could do, whether it's the martial arts honors, or 30 novels, or working in television, and or marrying the love of my life and the girl of my dreams and beautiful family. I have, it's been hard. Of course it has. Nothing worthwhile is easy. Nothing remarkable is easy. But all it takes to get everything you want is everything you've got. Are you willing to commit completely? That's where I came up with the magic formula, MAGIC. It's basically a formula for increasing luck in your life. So M is the map or model. You need to have a map or model of what it is that you're attempting to accomplish. A is for action. You have to be taking action every day towards your goal. You take another step every day towards your goal. G is for gratitude. That's the emotions. You need to deliberately stoke your emotions of feeling grateful and happy, and optimistic, and then I is intention, clear intention. That's your goal. How clear is your goal of what it is you're intending to accomplish? And then C is your courage or conviction, the degree to which you believe you can and should take these actions. If you've got all five of those things, a map, you're taking action, you flood yourself with positive emotions, you have a clear intention, and you have confidence that you should do this, you can do this, you can do this. If you've got all five of those things, the universe begins to bend in your direction. It is the strangest thing I've ever experienced. people, if you can do that, you will start finding people start coming to you with the resources that you need to succeed in your life. But you've got to, you have to take control, and you have to commit, and you have to say, I will die before I stop. When you do that, and you've got a model of what you're supposed to do, you're taking action, you have your positive emotions, clear intention, and you're acting with courage, nothing can stop you.
I mean, no one can argue with you with what you say, in a sense, because you're living that. You know, I mean, you're living proof of what you practice, what you preach.
Yeah, I do. You know, it's not like my life is perfect. It's not like I don't have, you know, haven't failed at many, many things, but you know, so what? It's the meaning of life is to seek joy. And I'm a happy guy. You know, I've been blessed, you know, with the quality of my friends and family and teachers, and you know, life is good, man.
So going back to the heavy stuff, the heavier questions, which writer or who have influenced you the most?
William Shakespeare. I give thanks every day that Shakespeare existed. I love going through his plays and studying them and thinking about the ways that he uses the things that he does. In terms of fiction writing, people like Harlan Ellison and Ray Bradbury.
And they were your friends. Like Harlan wasn't
Yes.
mine. Harlan wasn't mine.
No, Harlan was my friend.
Yeah.
I would not presume to say that Bradbury was, although we met on multiple occasions and he was very good to me. But I had nothing but the highest of respect for him. And it's not like, you know, we had a meal together, you know, once, and I went to his house, and there are a few other things that happened there. But he was the first writer who ever told me, first professional writer who ever told me that I had something worth developing. Man, I needed to hear that like roses need rain. I needed to feel like somebody saw me.
Ray told you that, or Harlan did?
No, Ray did. Ray
Wow.
did. Yeah. Yeah. Harlan Ellison was Harlan, you know, and you know, there was I can remember the day that he, you know, read my first book, Street Lethal, and called me up and told me he didn't think it was ready to be published. So I just broke down and cried. I remember that was a bad night. But then many years later, he saw my Outer Limits episode, A Stitch in Time, and he loved it. And because he had been critical of my other writing, I could really believe him when he told me he thought it was wonderful. So I have, you know, nothing but love for those guys and for many others. And of course, Larry Niven changed my life. You know, he was my mentor, and now he's my friend. And I would put myself between Larry and a knife. He saw this kid from South Central Los Angeles. You know, he was one of the great science fiction writers of the 20th century, and he took me in and mentored me. You know, how do you can't repay something like that. All you can try to do is to give back as much as you can. That's
because
I speak the way I do.
You were really tight with all three of them, with Jerry Brunel, Larry, and Harlan.
Yeah.
You were kind of like the quadrangle. Because
I had the fun of working on 4 books, 4 stories with Larry and Jerry. That was an amazing experience because I don't know how many people have ever sat in a room with 2 world-class writers on opposite sides of the room, simultaneously tearing their text to pieces, you know. And Jerry was merciless. I mean, he would just be laughing about it. We're murdering Barnes's precious prose. Barnes, was your mother scared by a gerund? I mean, he was merciless, and I would drive home just in misery. But I knew that it was like being thrown into the black belt class. I knew that if I could hang, I would learn things that you can't learn anywhere else in the world. If I was willing to go through the ego pain of being savaged like that, I'd be in the high growth environment of all time. And I hope, I can't flatter myself that I was as good a student as they were teachers, but I can tell you I ate up everything I could. I learned everything I could, and I am so grateful to those two men.
I mean, look what happened. You're in the game right now.
Yeah, I am. It's fun. I've kind of transitioned. I might be transitioning away from writing books because the opportunities in Hollywood, once you can position yourself, and that's the trick, it's getting to the place where you can get the work. Once you're there, it's much more rewarding hour for hour than writing books, as well as having, things like a health plan, retirement benefits, an actual union that protects you. The book writers don't have any of that. So my wife and I are going to take a shot at Hollywood. We're going to see. I would like to, I'd like to have my own television series. And there are several different things that are going right now that could lead to exactly that.
Are we in NDA time? Because I know you're right there right now. with the
I mean, I can talk about things a little bit. I can talk around them. I won't talk directly about stuff, but let's just say that there are about 4 or 5 different television series that we're deep into. Any one of which goes, it'll be life-changing. And I think that, frankly, I think we've got a shot. I think so. I mean, if not, then, we'll sell episodes here and episodes there, and, I'll make a ton of money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But having my own show or my own film would be wonderful. I mean, writing episodes of other people's shows is nice, and it's very remunerative. It's very satisfying, but I think it would be so thrilling to have my own show and to be able to really, and I've got one that's going on right now that we'll be pitching for the first time in the week coming up. And the Filipino martial arts are represented in the series.
Please reach out to me.
That could happen. That could happen.
I'm the guy. I'm the guy to hook you up.
Yes, you are. You're the guy to hook me up.
Concerning this, we're a little bit in overtime now. We're winding down our interview, and I know that we hit the flow state because your cat is making noises. And typically when you do the flow state or when you do yoga or meditation, you notice your cat always brushes up on you, and that's because they're in a state of flow. They're always in a state of flow.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that neither of them have jumped up on the desk.
So these meat and potato questions, I think that was a 2-parcel because he asked which writer have influenced you the most. You answered that, and for some reason he separated who is your favorite author and why. That's kind of would be the same question.
Yeah, it's the same question.
And then so the follow up to that is because you do work in the entertainment field, which film or movie has influenced you the most?
Well, my favorite film of all time is 2001: Space Odyssey. No question about it. I will only watch it on the big screen because McLuhan's, the medium is the message in that sense. But I've never had a more mind-blowing experience, or one that really showed me more what pure film could be. Just for fun, I'm a real fan of Marvel movies, and Godzilla movies and James Bond movies. So I really do like having fun at the movies. But 2001: Space Odyssey really did it for me, man. And I had the pleasure of having lunch with Arthur C. Clarke.
What? Wait, what? For real?
Yeah. He was doing some sort of a tour, and the Niven and Pornell were hosting the Citizen Space Advisory Council at Larry's house. Robert Heinlein was there, and Arthur Clarke came. And because he and Mr. Heinlein were on opposite sides of the issue concerning the Strategic Defense Initiative, he was being kind of shunned, and he was eating by himself. And I went over and said, "May I have lunch with you?" And he said, "Sure." And we talked for like 2 hours. It was great.
And folks, just a little bit of rewind because most people might not know what SDI is, particularly for the Generation Z folks. Essentially, that was Star Wars, a project that was run by DoD. In many ways, a lot of the protogenesis with that came from Dr. Jerry's research on Project Thor in creating relativistic hypervelocity kinetic rod bundles, which was basically like, metal tungsten rods, going in excess of Mach 10. He came up with that back in, so that was revived in the 80s during the time of Reagan. So what a lot of people don't know is there's a lot of interface with the science fiction authors and that project, because Dr. Jerry had a lot of contacts in DoD, as well as other science fiction writers. And so some science fiction writers was for it, some were not. So you just kind of, I'm just giving them a breakdown because they don't know that.
And you're doing a superb job.
So I just got a message right now concerning your comment. He's saying that perhaps he likes it because 2001 is the most initiatory ritual type film in cinema history.
Interesting.
It's like almost like an alchemical Rosicrucian.
It was definitely designed to give you a peek at what an experience beyond logic might be, contact with aliens. It was designed to be baffling to the conscious mind and to give you an experience rather than answers. It required two extreme geniuses to do that, Kubrick and Clark working off of each other. And it's a singular work.
I'm so sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's okay.
There's so many more questions about Pukulan, Bukti Negara, Silat, and Gorodan. But folks, we're winding down. We just probably need to have Steve some other time because I'm getting private messages up in the wazoo concerning that. But
I'd be happy to come back and talk about anything regarding these things. I have an obligation to teach. I connect all these things together. To me, if I'm talking about writing, I am talking about martial arts. I'm talking about my family, I am talking about martial arts. It's all the same thing to me.
So I got to answer, Remmer. Arthur C. Clarke was involved with the Strategic Defense Initiative. Well, no,
he was not. No, he was a critic of the Strategic Defense Initiative. He did not believe that that we should put weapons in orbit.
Yeah, so some science fiction writers were advisors though, and we were talking about Dr. Jerry being one.
Yeah, Dr. Jerry was there. Robert Heinlein was there. Greg Bear was there. Not David Ben, but Greg Benford was there. I'm pretty sure it was quite the gathering.
We're homies with a lot of these guys.
Yeah, there was an article about it in Pravda, in which I was mentioned. That's kind of fun.
So we're kind of closing down now because I want to tie into that because you said that 2001 is probably the most alchemical film initiatory thing. I'm gonna try to close in with this particular topic in FMA discussion is to ask you: have you had any kind of numinous or liminal experiences concerning the martial art, and would you care to share that with us?
Yeah. The one that I'll share was probably the first aura reading sort of experience that I ever had. I was working out at the Kali Academy like 4 days a week at the time. My girlfriend and I were both going down there 4 days a week. Man, what a great time that was. And it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're walking from where we lived down to the 7-Eleven and walking down the dark street. And I could glimpse a guy up in one of the alcoves of a shop. And I didn't really pay attention to him. I'm talking to my girlfriend. All of a sudden, I felt something touch me right there. And I turned and I looked at him, and he was staring at us. And I kept my eyes on him, and he stepped away from the store and began walking ahead of us. And I noticed that he was slowing down, and that if we kept walking at the same speed, we would be even to each other at a very shadowed place at the corner. So I held out my hand and I slowed my girlfriend down. I said, slow down, watch. And we slowed down and he slowed down and we slowed down more and he slowed down more. And then I stopped dead and he stopped dead. He turned around, looked over his shoulder at me, and then took off running around the corner. And I realized that extreme training that I've been going through had opened a little door of perception. There are other instances that have happened like that. Enough for me to know that realm is very real. I can't claim to understand it, but I do trust it.
So this time period would have been relatively in the early 80s, very early.
Yeah,
80s.
I'd say early 80s.
Yeah.
Filipino Kali Academy down in Torrance.
Oh, so you were like that golden period, man. Before the one who cannot be mentioned. Never mind. Changed the whole dynamic of the place.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Wow. I don't know what else to ask. I mean, we have more questions, but I do have to. I'm sorry. Like I only set aside time for about 90 minutes.
I understand completely. I would like to recommend that I asked myself the question: if I could go back to that kid who walked out in the middle of the street, what would I tell him? What would I give him? And that the course that I did with that lady, Dawn Callan, the Warrior's Journey, is the answer to that question. It is what did I get from practicing the martial arts all those decades? The essence of that is a connection between your instinct and your intuition, a sense that you've connected your animal instinct with your spiritual sense of oneness with the universe. And that doesn't require 40 years of martial arts practice. That requires an epiphany, a breakthrough, a willingness to love yourself deeply and to be committed to yourself. So that course that we created is the best thing that I've ever done. I've done a bunch of courses, but that one's special. And for the next month, it's still at the 25%, the 75% off initial, price. And that's at www.realwarriorsjourney.com. So anybody who's interested in that, we'd love to have you.
And we can't appear to be biased here in FMA discussion. I can only talk about my personal experience.
Please do.
You've been a very, very positive influence in my life.
I'm so glad.
Me taking that class coincided with being more heavily involved with FMA discussion and tying more towards the higher adepts and participants of our community. So
the people who are like real players seem to be attracted to you. That you have a space in your heart that they find, that they're willing to interact with you in a closed door session. They're avuncular to you.
Yeah. And I really, I would make an endorsement because I think that course was a key to that. Your course was a key to that. So we will post the link in the description for the actual episode, and then I'll also post this both in FMA discussion and also in our YouTube channel. I'll put it in the description box.
Great. And if there's anything I can do to contribute to what it is that you're doing here, any questions that people have, don't hesitate to ask. I'd be happy to come back on. The martial arts are my people. They're my family. And the Filipino martial arts are closer to my heart than any other, really. The BKF is my family. There's no question. But within the BKF, there's room for many different arts. I got a lot of questions concerning those Halikon days of the Kali Academy and they were
Stephen Plink.
Bad brothers. No question about it.
They
were no joke.
They had a lot of questions about BKF, the Halikon days of BKF, Kali Academy, and your avuncular training with Stephen Plink. So I just don't have time right now. I'm sorry, I have somewhere to go later on. But I would love to have you on.
And I'm going to watch a horror movie with my wife.
We're getting
snuggle, eat popcorn, and watch a horror movie.
Would you mind me? What would that be? So maybe I could watch that when I get back home tonight.
I think it's called Malevolent. It's the James. I think I forget, that may not be the title, but it's the new James Wan movie. It's both in the theaters and it's streaming at the same time. So it just came out today.
Yeah, his new film.
Yeah,
Okay.
malicious, malevolent, something like malignant, something like that. I forget.
Malignant. I think malignant.
Okay, is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm definitely gonna tie into that. Well, that's it, folks. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe button for this episode when we post it into YouTube. And this is Julius Vladimir Francisco signing off for episode 195.